So in this example, let's try to retrieve an image from the internet and show it on our spinning cube. So in here we have a get image test behavior that has a URI defined. It's an absolute URI to an image we found on the internet, and we've dropped the renderer of the spinning cube in here. So let's take a look what that looks like. Start it up. Behavior waits 3 seconds, so that's just delayed. And here's our image on the spinning cube. Let's take a look at what that looks like in the editor, in the code. So here's our get image test behavior. In the start, we've set it to wait 3 seconds, and then we call the get image operation, and we pass in the initializer our absolute URL. And in the send, we're going to use all 3 callbacks. And we approached it a little bit differently this time. Instead of using actions, we've just defined 3 methods that take the get image operation and the HTTP response. So in the success, we're going to take the operations image texture field, which is a texture 2D, and assign it to the cube's main texture. On failure, we would just display a list of why the operation failed, and on complete is going to get called and say, hey, we completed. So in the actual get image HTTP operation, let's take a look at that. It's a get operation, and the path is a template, and the entire path is the template, which is going to get mapped from our image URI field that we've passed into this operation in the initializer. And it's a URI segment, so it's the entire URI is going to be replaced. And let's take a look at our responses. So we get the data back from the image server, and it's going to send over a bunch of bytes. So we want to do something with those bytes. And here we have 2 fields, one being a texture 2D and another one a Unity sprite. We've attributed each one of those with a mapper. In the sprite case, it's the HTTP response sprite body. What's going to happen with the bytes are going to get converted to a texture 2D, and the 2D texture is going to get converted to a sprite. In this instance, for the texture 2D, the bytes are going to get converted to a 2D texture and assigned to the image texture field. So let's talk a little bit about mappers. Both of these mappers, they inherit from the binary mapper, which takes a look at the bytes coming back. And what it does internally is use converters. So line 26 here is the long way of converting bytes to an image. Each of the mappers uses one or more converters that can be chained. A converter is a class. Let's take a look at it. This deserialized texture 2D converter is a class that implements iValue converter, and what happens during the conversion process, this convert method is called with the object to be converted, in this case an array of bytes, the field that these bytes are supposed to get assigned to, and an out parameter whether the conversion was successful or not, and the actual return value is the converted value. So these converters can be chained. If we wanted to convert from the bytes to a texture, and then from a texture to a sprite, you potentially could use 2 converters in a row. So this converter basically creates a texture 2D and loads image from the bytes. So this line 26 is the long way, but line 27 we just created a custom attribute, and if you go look at that, it basically defines the converter to use in its constructor. Some other attributes on the class are HTTP content type. So we're telling the image server that we're sending it text HTML, but we're actually not sending any data, so this attribute is irrelevant. Then we're also telling the server that we want to accept image MIME types. Then we set the timeout of 10 seconds, and we're going to use the default www provider. Here we have a couple of falters. So what happens with image servers is if we request an image that does not exist, sometimes they send a 404, but sometimes they send a 200 response of an HTML MIME type, and they give you, let's say, a selection of, hey, we didn't find this image, but look at these related images. Well, we don't want that. We just want the image to come back. So in case they send a 404, we want to fault the operation. And in case they send a 200 response with an HTML page, we want to fault that as well. So here we're telling it that we want to fault on an invalid media type. So if we see that the content type coming back from the image server is anything besides image MIME type, then we're going to fault the operation. So in this video, we've touched a little bit upon mappers and converters, and we saw how to retrieve an image.